Habitat is a place where living things live, typically a shelter. So, example ng habitat is ocean. Shelter siya ng mga aquatic animals. Next is niche. Niche is the role of the living things in the environment and it has three parts. Finding foods, finding shelter, and finding mate. So, ang niche ay isa lang way upang makasurvive ang isang living organism sa environment na kinabibilangan niya. So, community interactions, competition is when organisms eat the same food. So, by the way, ang competition, lumalabas lang yan pag nag-overlap yung niche ng dalawang animal. Tulad na tong tiger at wolf, nag-overlap yung niche nila, so magko-compete sila dito sa Siberian stag. So, para makakain sila, kailangan na din nilang mag-compete dahil iisa lang yung, dahil nag-overlap yung finding food na niche nila. So, next is predation. Is when one organism eats another. So, isang animal, kinain yung isang animal, predation. Next is symbiosis. Is when two species lives together. So, there are three types of symbiosis. First is commensalism. Commensalism is a type of relationship where one of the organisms benefits greatly from the symbiosis. The other is not helped but it's not harm or damage from the relationship. In other words, this is one-sided symbiotic relationship. So, example ng commensalism is itong remora fish at ng shark. Itong remora fish, meron niyang vacuum-like sa kanilang head. Tapos, didikit lang yan sa shark. At pag nakahanap na ng pagkain itong shark, yung mga remora fish na yung kakainan, tira-tira. So, na-meet niya yung definition ng commensalism, which is the other is not helped but is not harmed or damaged from the relationship. Tapos, isa lang yun nagbe-benefit. Next is parasitism. Is when one organism benefits from the relationship but at the expense of the other. The organism may live inside the other's body or on its surface. So, example ng parasitism is itong kuto sa buhok ng bata. Kung saan, ang kuto ay nakikinabang, ginagawa niyang source ng food yung blood ng bata, while nahaharm naman yung bata. So, next is mutualism. It's a close relationship where both parties benefit. Both species will benefit from the relationship and many of these relationships are long-lasting. So, example ng mutualism is yung fruit bat at trees. Yung fruit bat, kakainin yung bunga ng trees. Tapos, yung fruit bat, yung dumi nun is yung butulan din ng prutas. So, dahil sa fruit bat, dumadami yung bilang ng specific trees na kinain niya. So, food chain and food web. Food chain refers to the linear representation of events in an ecosystem, where one living organism eats another organism. So, food chains lang yan, katulad na to. Yung trees, kakainin siya ng deer. Or yung bunga ng trees, kakainin ng deer. Tapos itong deer ay kakainin naman ng lion. So, food chain. Next is food web. Is a detailed interconnecting diagram that shows the overall food relationships between organisms in a particular environment. Simply, a food web is made up of interconnected food chains. Kung sa food chains, isang line lang. Dito sa may food web, parang sanga-sanga na siya. Kumbaga, itong hawk, kakainin niya yung rabbit. Tapos itong fox naman, kakainin din ng rabbit. Pero yung hawk, kakainin siya ng snake. Tapos yung snake naman, kakain siya ng frog. Ganun. So, kumbaga, iba-iba sila ng predator. So, next is classification of animals according to their diet. Carnivores are those that feed with meat. So, lahat lang ng kumakain ng karne, carnivores ang tawag ron. Example is itong lion. Next is herbivores are plant eaters. Plant eaters, so example nga is cow, goat, horse, panda, tapos itong kawala. Next is omnivores are animals that include both meats and plants on their diet. So itong bear, kumakain niya ng plant and meat. So omnivores yun. Next is classification of living things. Classification of living things. In science, the practice of classifying organism is called taxonomy. Taxis means arrangement and nomas means method. The modern taxonomic system was developed by the Swedish botanist Carolus Linnaeus. He used simple physical characteristics or organisms to identify and differentiate between different species and is based around genetics. Linnaeus developed a hierarchy of groups for taxonomy to distinguish different levels of similarity. Each classifying group, called taxon, is subdivided into other groups. To remember the order, it is helpful to use a mnemonic device. So, ito yon. The taxa in hierarchical order is domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So, para mas madali matandaan yan, gumamit tayo ng mnemonics, which is, Dear King Philip came over for good soup. So, domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So, yun.
We're talking about living things. So the next one is the taxa in hierarchical orders. We have a domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. First one is the domain. We have a three domain. First domain is domain archaea or archaebacteria. Any of a group of single-celled prokaryotic organism but with biochemistry and RNA markers that are distinct from bacteria and eukarya. So archaebacteria is also bacteria, but the difference is this archaea has RNA markers. Archaea were initially classified as bacteria. So yun. Initially classified siya as bacteria. Pero ngayon, hiniwalay na. Next domain is bacteria or eubacteria. Bacteria are defined as organisms that are microscopic. So microscopic yung mga bacteria, alam naman natin yun. Unicellular, independently reproducing, and most freely living. Briefly called the eubacteria or true bacteria. So yung mga alam nating bacteria, yun. And last domain is eukarya or eukaryote. Encompasses most of the world visible living things. So yung mga eukarya ay yung mga visible living things. Like sa kingdom, we have a protists, fungi, plantae, animalia, all under this category. So sa eukarya din matatagpuan, makaklasify yung human. Next hierarchical order is kingdoms. We have 6 kingdoms. First one is Animalia, the animals. Next is Plantae, mga plants. Third is Protists. So what is Protists? Protists introduced by the German biologist Ernst Haeckel in 1866. Classified siya as microorganism. So yung mga protists, yun yung mga microorganisms, which are neither animals nor plants. So, di malaman kung animal siya o plants. Kaya we have a protist. For example, some protists can exhibit property of both animals and plants. So, pwede rin siyang have both properties of both animals and plants. Fourth one is fungi. Are organisms which obtain food by absorbing materials in their bodies. So nabubuo sila by absorbing materials. Mushroom and molds are some example of these fungi. So yung mushroom and molds, alam naman natin yung mushroom, yung tsaka yung molds, yung mga kulay green na namumuo. Originally, they were part of the plant kingdom. So dati, nasa plant kingdom sila nga. Pero ngayon, nire-categorize sila when they were discovered not to photosynthesis. So hindi sila nag-photosynthesis. Number 5, kingdoms. Eubacteria, and number 6 is archaea. Yung nabanggit rin natin sa domain kanina. So, alam na natin yan. Ang pinagkaiba lang nila, yung eubacteria, they have cell walls made of peptidoglycan. Yun yung eubacteria. Sa archaea naman, which live in extreme environment, such as salt lakes and acidic springs. Sa archaea naman, lack of cell wall. Peptidoglycan. So, ayan sila. The 6 kingdoms. We have animalia, animals, plants, fungi, protists, eubacteria, and archaebacteria. So, magkaiba yung eubacteria at archaea. Next hierarchical order is the phylum. Here, we have a 9 major animal phylum, but the total of this is 36. 9 lang yung ipapaliwanag bilang major kasi masyadong maraming 36. First phylum is Porifera. Phylum Porifera, approximately 10,000 species. Ito yung mga sponge. Simple invertebrate animals that live in aquatic habitats. So, naglilive sila sa ocean, ganun, sa ilalim ng tubig. Invertebrate lang siya. Walang buto, ganun. But still animal. Although the majority of sponge are marine, some species live in freshwater lakes and streams. So, pwede rin sa freshwater. They were found in shallow ocean environment to depth as great as 5 kilometers. So, kailaliman talaga. Kung gusto niyo makakita, punta kayo sa malalim. Kung gusto niyo makakita ng phylum Porifera. All adult sponges are sessile, meaning they live permanently attached to rock or other submerged object and do not move about on their own. So, hindi naman pala sila nag-move. Katulad niyang nasa picture, naka-attach lang sila sa rocks. Next phylum is Cnidaria. Phylum Cnidaria, approximately 11,000 species, aquatic, so live in ocean din siya sa ilalim. But ito naman gumagalaw na. Invertebrate rin siya, have a hollow digestive cavity opening. So ganyan yung itsura na kanilang digestive. Body symmetry radial. Example of these are jellyfishes, corals, sea anemones, hydras, and Portuguese manopar. So ayan, yung mga yan. We have a jellyfish there, corals, sea anemones. Next phylum is Platyhelminthes. Platyhelminthes, approximately 25,000 species, aka flatworms. Lacks a column and other body cavities can be found in marine or freshwater. So sa tubig rin yung mga Platyhelminthes. Example of this is tapeworms. So yung mga tapeworms, mga naninirahan na worms sa water. So halos lahat naman sila mga body symmetry, lahat mga phylum din. Bilateral. Next is Nematoda, approximately 80,000 species. So mas marami siya sa Platyhelminthes. aka the roundworms, very long and narrow body symmetry rin siya, bilateral. Example is Ascaris. So yung mga Nematoda, yun yung mga roundworms. Example yung Ascaris, yun yung parasitic worms na kadalasan matatagpuan sa human body, sa loob natin. Next phylum is Annelida. Approximately 17,000 species. Oblong bodies have segment divided externally by shallow rings, body symmetry, bilateral earthworms. So, mga Annelida matatagpuan sa earth o sa lupa. Kaya earthworms. Yun yung common na nakikita natin ng mga worms. Number 6 phylum is Mollusca. Approximately 85,000 species, one of the largest phyla composed of many diverse organisms. So, one of the largest na rin siya. All have a soft body symmetry, bilateral broadly. Example is octopus, snail, oyster. So, yung mollusca, meron silang mga soft bodies kahit meron silang mga shells, gano'n. Ayan, meron tayong mga snails, octopus. Number 7 is phylum Echinodermata. Approximately 17,000 species, means spiky skin. So yung mga skin nila, they have spike. Dwells at the bottom of the floor. Body symmetry, radial. Example yung mga starfish, sea lilies, sea urchins, and may mga tusok-tusok yung mga body nila. Kaya, pag nakakita yung ganyan, mahirap hawakan. Maminsan meron pang mga magkasakit, gano'n. Kaya ingat. Number 8, phylum, the Arthropoda. Approximately 3,700,000 species. Oh, so siya yung pinakamaraming species. Arthropoda has jointly appendage body extension that give them a wide range of control motion. Most successful because they are the most diverse, living in a great range of habitats. So kaya marami siyang species dahil malawak yung sa kanyang habitats, most diverse siya. Body symmetry rin, bilateral din. Example, lobster, crabs, spiders, mite, centipedes, and millipedes. Yan. Diba ganyan? Malawak yung kanilang habitats. Next is Chordata. As internal skeletal rod. So ito na yung pinaka-common na species, yung mga may skeletal rod. Meron complete digestive system, ventral heart, closed blood system, and a tail. So body symmetry, bilateral din. Example of these are shark, o di ba meron silang mga skeletal, fishes, yung mga fish, lizards, frogs, and including there is the humans, tao. I think that's the last one.
Class under phylum Chordata. Number 1. Class Agnatha, which are lampreys. They do not have jaws, are ill-shaped, prey on fish, and have larval forms, which are differently from the adults. Ito yung mga type na mga isda na walang jaw. Yung ganito. Ito yung mga example na class Agnatha. Yan, ganyan. Number 2, class Amphibia are frogs, newts, and salamanders. They were the first land vertebrates. Frogs especially go through the metamorphosis. The embryos must develop in water. Amphibians are cold-blooded. Ito yung mga class amphibia ng are frogs. Ito yung mga alang eggs. Yung mga eggs nila alang shells. So yung sperm nila can swim through the water, the eggs. Through the eggs. Yan. Kaya mga example, ayan. Yung class amphibia. Ayan, amphibia. Number 3, class Aves. The bird, a key characteristic of bird is that they have feathers. Birds are warm-blooded. Ayun. na yung vision nga nila, kaya nilang, kahit nasa area sila, kaya nilang makita yung mga foods nila, like yung mga daga, yung ganon, na kahit malayo, kaya nilang makita. Yun yung mga example ng class avis, yung mga hawks, yun, pag lumilipat. And ay mga may owl pa yun, parrot, eagle, tsaka yung pabo, parrot, ayan. Yun yung mga types ng class aves. Number 4, class chronodictyes, which includes sharks and rays. They have a cartilage skeleton, not bone. They are not bionate like other fish, so they must swim or sink the cold blood. They cold-blooded. Ito yung mga, ayun nga, nakalagay dito, ayun na sharks and rays, yan. Mga pating. Number 5, class Mammalia is the mammals. These characteristic of mammals are the presence of fur or hair and mammary glands derived from modified sweat glands which produce milk for the young mammals are warm-blooded. Ito yung ayun nga, mammalia. Ito yung mga nagpo-produce ng milks like sa mga anak nila. Yung kagaya ng aso, pusa, at pati na rin yung mga baka. Kapag sila yung mga nagpo-produce ng milk. Ayun yung mga tinatawag na mammals. Number 6, class Osteichthyes is the bony fish. This is the numerous of vertebrate classes. They are cold-blooded. Their swim bladder is an air sac used to control buoyancy. Thus, unlike the sharks, bony fish can hold still at any depth and not sink. Ito yung ito yung mga example ng class Osteichthyes. Ito yung mga salmon, yun. COD, tuna, gano'n. Yan yung mga example ng class Osteichthyes. Number 7, class Reptilia. Ito yung mga snake, turtle, crocodiles, and lizard. Ayan yung mga example niyan. Reptiles have scales and are dry to the touch. Their eggs have leathery shells. Reptiles are cold-blooded. Reptiles need less food or energy to live and live longer than comparable size mammal. Ito yung, ayun nga, yung reptile. Sila yung mga cold-blooded. Hindi kagaya ng mga bird, warm-blooded. Reptiles need less food. So, ayun nga. Need nila ng less food or energy to live and live longer. Ito naman ang mga order other class mammals. Ayan, makikita natin dito sa part na to ay Rodentia. Typical example, beavers, mice, porcupines, rats. And key characteristic nila is small plants eater and kinakain nila yung mga damo. Chisel-like incisor teeth. So, approximate numbers of living speckles, 1,814. Tapos dito naman ay order ng Chiroptera, bats, ayan, flying mammals, ayan nga, mammals. Primarily fruit or insect eaters, sila yung kumakain ng prutas at mga insect. Elongate fingers, thin wing, membrane, noctumal, navigate by sonar. Yan, 986 yung approximate numbers of living speckles nila. So, insectivora, moles, shrews, and yung picture ng mga insectivora. Small burrowing mammals, insect eaters, and parehas din sila ng bats. Most primitive place mammals spend most of their time underground. Ayan, nasa ilalim ng lupa sila. So, kahit 390 ang kanilang approximate numbers of living speckles. Marsupialia. Ito yung kangaroos, koalas, ayan, pouch mammals, yung develop in abdominal pouch. 280 ang kanilang approximate numbers of living speckles. Carnivora. Ito yung bears, cat, raccoons, weasel, dogs. Sila yung kumakain ng mga meat. Yun, kaya sinabing carnivora. It adapted for shearing flesh. No native families in Australia. 240 ang kanilang approximate living. At ito naman sa Artiodactylia, cattle, deer, giraffes, pigs with 2 or 4 toes, mostly herbivorous. And herbivorous, ibig sabihin ay kumakain sila ng mga damo. Tapos dito naman sa Cactaceae, dolphin, and mga example niyan, porpoise, whales, ayan, streamlined bodies, front limbs modify into flippers, no hind limbs, blowholes on top of the head, no hair except on muzzle. Yun, wala silang buhok except nga lang sa muzzle. Lagomorpha. Ayun, example ng Lagomorpha is rabbits, Ares picas. 4 upper includes greater than the 2 seen in rodents. Hind leg often longer than 4 legs. An adaptation of jumping and tumatalon rabbit. Suborder Pinnipedclea. Si lions, an example niyan, seals, walrus, and feed mainly on fish, limbs modified for swimming. And Perissodactylia, ito yung mga horse, rhinoceros, zebras, and herbivorous teeth adapted or for chewing and herbivorous din sila. And Proboscidea. And example niyan ay elephants, long trunk herbivorous, 2 upper incisor and elongated as largest living land animal. Ayun, yung example ng Proboscidea. And sa taxonomy of living things and domain, Eukarya, kingdom, Animalia, phylum, chordata, class, Mammalia, order, primates, family, Hominidae, genus, Homo, species, Sapiens. Tapos human ay Homo sapiens because nagsama ang family and species. Kaya ang human ay Homo sapien. Yun. Thank you for listening.